Hi guys, I'm Diliana.
I'm Marta, and this is Velvet Violence, where it's cozy on the outside, but the story's completely unhinged.
We sit back, we get comfortable, and dive into the type of crimes that start off strange and somehow just keep getting worse.
There will be questions, there will be side eyes, there will probably be moments where we regret looking this up.
So grab a seat, because it's about to get weird, unsettling, and just a little bit addictive.
Hi guys, I just wanted to pop on here and tell you that we are not licensed investigators or lawyers. We're just here telling a true story in our own dramatic way. Everything is based on a publicly available information and personal commentary. So please, don't come after us. We've watched enough true crime to know how that ends. There are crimes that shock, crimes that horrify, and then there are crimes that seem too steep beyond the boundaries of what we believe human being is capable of. Tonight's story, it's not just disturbing, it's deeply unsettling. It lingers, it stains the mind. This is the story of Katherine Knight. Police were called to a modest home on Lenthorpe Road. At first, it seems like a routine welfare check, nothing out of the ordinary, until they stepped inside. What they found would become one of the most infamous crime scenes in Australian history. A man, John Price, was missing, but the house told a different story. There was blood, a lot of it, dragged across the floor, smeared along the walls, evidence of a struggle that was not quick and not merciful. And then the silence. In the kitchen, investigators made a discovery that would haunt even the most seasoned police officers. A pot, still warm. Inside it, something cooking. And on the dining table, plates were set, as for the meal. But this wasn't just any meal. John Price wasn't just dead. He had been prepared. At the center of it all was one person, Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight would go to become the first woman in Australian history to be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But even that sentence feels small compared to the enormity of what she did. Because this isn't just a case about murder, it's about what happens when violence escalates, when warnings are just ignored, and when one person's darkness is allowed to grow unhinged.
So, who was actually Katherine? Was it anything unusual with her? Was she had some issues, I guess?
From the beginning, at first glance, not really. Katherine Knight lived with what would many describe as a normal life. She worked, she had relationships, and she was a part of her local community. But if you lock the doors and look at her actual personal life, there were massive patterns that stood out. Her relationships were often intense. Arguments didn't just stay arguments, they were basically escalated. She was bullied at a very young age. However, she then became a bully. She started abusing kids when she was very little, and when she was 16 years old, she picked up hunting as a hobby. She kept all the remainings, like horns, heads, basically as trophies. She really was interested in death and in collectibles of dead animals.
Serial killer vibes.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, she left school and she got a job as a slicer in a slaughterhouse. And according to some co-workers, she was in love with it. She stayed overtime, she looked at the other people slaughtering the animals, and it was the best part of her day. she became that interested in it that she became the best person of the slaughterhouse. She became like on the higher position, basically. Thanks to that, she received her set of knives that she just cherished. It was the best thing she could ever get. She was absolutely obsessed with her job, but it became very bizarre for the workers because majority of them just been at that work because they wanted to survive. You know, they needed to have money. For her, it wasn't just a money. She didn't really care about that. It was just the passion that she had in it.
I don't really know what to say. Like, she's interested in obviously some weird shit. I never met like too many women butchers. Who was she as a child though? Like, how was her childhood like?
Yeah, so Katherine grew up in very dysfunctional and traumatic household. She was born on the 24th of October in 1955. She had 6 brothers and 1 twin sister. Her mother Barbara had 4 sons with a man named Jack Rowan. He was a gambler and alcoholic, so she basically left him. Then she met a guy called Katherine Knight, who was her second husband then, and which she had the remaining 4 children with. They moved to Aberdeen, and Ken started to be physically abusive towards Barbara in front of all of those children. But it escalated to the point that eventually Ken and Barbara was abusive towards the children. Katherine later claimed that they've used electrical cords and dog leashes to hit them with. And the most disturbing part is, guys, that her brothers and the stepfather was sexually abusing her. And she had no one to turn into, you know, for safety, for love and trust. So it just shows that she did what she did, you know, because she turned to the monster that she saw from a very young age, you know, of her stepfather being a monster. Her brothers were monsters. So she lived on a flight or fight mode and she became the fighter. She grew up in an environment where conflict and aggressions were basically not uncommon. There are also reports that even from a young age, she displayed a troubling behavior, episodes of anger, and went beyond what you expected. It wasn't just occasional frustration, it was something more intense, something harder to control basically. But guys, I want to clarify something. It's very important to clear that many people experience difficult childhoods and never go to harm others. But in this case, these early experiences in life that Katherine had contribute to a pattern. They didn't define her future entirely, but they set the stage of how she would respond to basically. I want to clarify also that she knew she had a problem, but she did not seek help.
My next question is like, how did people describe her in her like early stages of life?
So they describe her as very intense and manipulative. However, they also describe her as a normal part of the community. She was a normal community member. She was very polite, she was charming. She blended into society, that she's just a normal being person. Only people who knew her closer knew how she really is, but not to that point, you know, of what we're about to find out in a bit.
It's always the way though, isn't it? The closest people to you, they know you the best.
Exactly. So it was, I guess it was just a facade that she was showing, you know, going to community centers, spending times with other neighbors, and everyone just said, yeah, she's a normal woman. I guess she probably didn't open up about her childhood. So seeing her, you would just think, yeah, she's just a normal neighbor.
Back in the day, I guess it was shameful if you've been through. Maybe I regret to ask this, but obviously we know how her relationship with John ended. But how about her previous relationships? Because I believe how old was she when all that happened? Do you know?
So when the murder happened, she was only 44 years old. It happened back in 2000. But before that, she had quite few relationships, and the patterns became more visible. for the people she was with. At first, a deep emotional love. That's what it was. Proper attachment to the other person. When she was with you, you became her world, basically. But it was also followed by very big jealousy, massive control, and then eventually violence. So in 1974, when she was 18 years old, Katherine married a truck driver named David Kellett. It was her first love. He described her as the most wonderful wife you can wish for at the beginning.
Okay.
Then she became unpredictable, violent. It started on the wedding, guys. So on the wedding night, after they had sex and went to bed, David woke up to her choking him.
What the fuck?
I think maybe it was some sort of flashbacks or where she was sexually assaulted. But it's just my speculations. So yes, even though after that wedding night, he described her as the most wonderful woman you can wish for. So it just shows you a bit of that manipulation that she did to him. She also displayed her knife collection on the wall behind the bed.
So weird.
So apparently she hit him with iron. She put a knife against his throat, but David never reported her because she always promised she's going to change. She always apologized of what has happened. They had a make-up sex and everything went back to normal. So eventually David had enough and he left her. And fair play to that guy, because probably that would eventually happen what happened to poor John. But then she met another guy, and his name was also David. Yeah, it was David Saunders, who she met in 1986. This will be a very sad part, guys, but in the following year, reportedly, cut the throat of his 2-month puppy right in front of his eyes for no other reason, just to demonstrate what she would do to him if he ever cheated on her. On another occasion, apparently, he also put a knife towards his throat and stabbed him with a kitchen scissors, straight into the stomach.
He survived though.
He did survive. He left her. Obviously, that was enough.
Well, I would be out, like, since the first David after the wedding night with the second David after the dog situation, yeah.
You know, as mentioned before, if you didn't know her deep enough, you would think she's a nice woman. So obviously she met another guy. She must have lured him into the relationship. But I feel like it's just been so manipulated and it went so deep that you just basically forgive her. If someone would kill my puppy, like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, no way. I wouldn't forgive anything. Like, doesn't matter if you're married, if you're not married, how long you've been together. That's disturbing. It's like, it's not normal for a person to even think to do this.
No.
Yeah.
And then, she stabbed him. She wanted to slice his throat just to show that manipulation, that jealousy that she had. For no reason, guys, by the way. There was no reason. He must have done something the way she didn't like. So she decided to pursue what she wanted to.
I don't know. I'm just shocked how she managed to be with so many people, like, without anybody reporting her and for what she was doing. So, yeah, tell me about John. I want to know more about him as well.
This is it's very sad because John was a father of 3 and he was well liked to a community. He was very popular in the local area in Aberdeen where he lived. People who knew him described him as very likable, generous and kind, and would always be the first to lend a helping hand. Something happened, John was always there. People absolutely adored him. And at the start of the relationship, John was saying that he had a great relationship with Katherine. They had an amazing life, amazing, intense sex drive. So they basically were shagging each other day and night, and they had a great time. There was no complaints at the beginning. However, their relationship became very strange and toxic later on. So friends and co-workers started to realize there is something wrong with John. They met Katherine and they realized that she became very toxic towards him. For example, they met in a pub where she and John was there. John just looked on the side because a lady was passing by and she made a scene. So it became very uncomfortable for the other people because she could argue for ages. She was screaming at him, but yet he just sat there being silenced and just waiting for the outbursts to pass, basically.
She was already abusing him.
However, guys, day before the murder, he did say to his co-workers, "If I won't show up to work, that means that Katherine killed me."
So he knew. So was there any other warning signs except of her jealousy, obviously?
Yes, and it was many warning signs. So in February 29th in 2000, it was in Aberdeen, South Wales in Australia. It basically started like a normal day. People were waking up, going to work, including Pricey, because that's how they called him. It wasn't John, it was Pricey, because it was John Price. He loved work and he was very passionate about it. He worked at the local mines in Aberdeen, and he tended to go to work pretty much an hour before his shift started. People said that he always, when he showed up to work, he was fully energetic. He always wanted to stay there for as long as he can. When you love what you're doing, you don't work for the rest of your life, you know, and I feel like he had that mindset. He just absolutely loved what he did. However, on that particular morning, Johnny wasn't himself. Something bothered him. So he told his co-workers that he's having troubles with Katherine. They already knew who Katherine was, but they wanted to dig deeper of what actually happened. 2 days prior, Katherine was threatening him with their beloved butcher knives. So he went to the police and he filed a report.
Good for him.
But he was still waiting for the actions to be taken. So the co-workers basically said, "You can stay at mine, you know, you can live in our houses for a few days," because they clearly see that there is something wrong going to happen. However, he said, "I'm not gonna let her win. This is my house. She's not going to kick me out. So I'm going back to the house after my shift."
Why, John? Why would you go back?
But because that pattern was pretty much on everyday basis, he knew what to do to make her happy. So after his shift, what he usually did, he took his shoes off, he put it in front of the main doors, he went to the house, showered, went to bed, and he was waiting for Katherine to show up so they can have their amazing sex and everything would get back to normal. That was what they always did, including this night. However, it would be his last night.
Can you tell me what actually happened to him?
At around 6 o'clock in the morning, his co-workers and bosses started getting worried. As mentioned, he was always showing up to work at least an hour prior to his shift. So they called the landline and no one has answered the phone. Neighbors noticed that his car is still on the driveway and the mentioned shoes are still on the porch. So they decided to go in and knock the doors and see maybe there is, you know, something happened. Maybe he had problems, health problems, etc., you know. But as soon as they approached the porch, they realized that there is a blood on the handle. So they immediately stepped out, they called the police, and they're waiting for the police to show up. Only a few minutes later, the Australian police show up at their doors. They use a crowbar to force their entry because they couldn't get into property at all. Everything was fully locked. But guys, the moment they stepped in, they knew that something wrong happened there. It was super quiet. The blood was literally everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, and there was a trail leading to the front door. Trail of blood. What they saw was unknown object that hung from the ceiling on the coat hook. At the first glance, police couldn't identify what it was. Then they realized that it was a human skin body, just skin being hooked to the side. She literally butchered him. She took his own skin and he just put it on a hook. Few steps away, in another room, they found the body, the skinless body without the head. It was just a torso. Going back to the beginning of me saying of what actually happened, they went to the kitchen and they saw 2 plates, set plates. There was a meat on each of them and vegetables. Also what they saw were little cards next to the plates with the names of John's children. Police later learned that those side of meats were actual John's remains. So it looks like Katherine wanted to feed his own father to their children. I've mentioned about the pot simmering on a cooker. They looked into it and it was John's head simmering inside the pot. As mentioned, it was the most gruesome murder in Australian history. The police officers even stopped eating meat for months of what they saw. It was so disturbing how a woman basically skinned her own husband, left the torso in the other room, prepared the food for his children, and it was all their father. It was just awful. Later on, they searched the house to find maybe other bodies. They were so confused of what's going on. They had no idea about Katherine. No one previously reported her to the police, so they didn't know what happened in that house at first. So they started going to other rooms and they realized there is a woman lying in bedroom, totally passed out, but full of blood. Next to her, it was an empty pill bottle. So they realized she must have taken all this medication. So they called ambulance immediately. She was taken outside. The neighbors were everywhere. Obviously, police came around. Yeah, so the neighbors were everywhere. And they saw Katherine being taken to ambulance. Police started asking the neighbors, like, "Oh, do you know Katherine? What might have happened, etc." They started interrogating them. And the neighbors pretty much spilled out of who Katherine was. So the police had kind of an idea of what might have happened, but they didn't really knew anything yet. It was just speculations at that time. Katherine later on woke up in a hospital, but she claimed that she has amnesia. And she just doesn't remember of what happened whatsoever.
What a fucking bitch.
Yep. Police knew she's chatting shit because they already spoke with the people and they started looking at the background of what might have happened. They realized that there was $1,000 taken from John's account on the March the 1st, which was long after the murder. Obviously, he was unalive then, so they knew that she must have taken the money. They've asked her about it. They've asked of what might have happened. They started interrogating her. But she completely ignored their question and started chatting and saying that John abused her from a very early stage, that she was mentally and physically abused on a regular basis. So that she didn't answer the questions. She basically just started,
Lying.
Lying. Yeah, pretty much. What she didn't know, guys, is that Australian police is very clever. They started digging into her previous relationships, and they started talking with both Davids, and they realized who Katherine really was.
It's shame though that Davids didn't report her
I know.
previously, because that could have been
Prevented,
Yeah.
of course. But she denied everything. She basically said they chatting shit, there is no chance that I have abused them. You know, they just wanted to have their time with police, you know, they blackmailing her,
So
etc.
who cooked her husband then?
Exactly. It's just crazy.
Oh, that's
However,
insane.
you know, the evidence was started growing. So they searched the house and they found taxidermy animals. You know, hunting was her hobby. They found that beloved set of knives, and they also found apparently shitloads of violent movies.
I just can't believe this. So I'm guessing she went to trial. So what happened then on the trial? I guess she should have confessed. Come on.
I know.
Did
Yeah.
she?
No. At the beginning, she basically said she's innocent. She didn't confess whatsoever. However, there was no question of who really did it, you know. So the trial, it was back in 2000, as mentioned, she murdered John Price. The crime was extremely clear. The evidence against her was overwhelming. So even though she claimed innocent at the beginning, they knew and they started digging deeper until she finally confessed. So thanks to that, there was no long trial. They basically, she pleaded guilty. Instead of many cases, it takes months, you know. This was just a few days. And the jury moved straight to sentencing. So even without that trial, that big trial, police, and there was some massive evidence, everyone knew that it's just the most gruesome crime they saw in Australian history. So there was no chance that she could not plead guilty.
Yeah, it was clear as a day.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty much. You mentioned in the beginning that she was the first woman to be sentenced to life imprisonment.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. So no woman ever has been sentenced life in prison before her?
No.
In Australia?
Never. It was so gruesome. The judge basically detailed night crimes. So she stabbed John Price multiple times. She skinned his body. She hung the skin in the doorway, basically. She cooked part of his body, and she attempted to serve that with vegetables to his children. So it was a massive level of planning of what's going to happen. And it was so gruesome that they decided, like, no chance this woman is ever allowed to leave the prison.
I'm not surprised. She should have been in prison a long time ago, I think, before all this happened. I just can't believe that it got that far.
Yeah, it's crazy.
To me, it's like it was bad enough what she did to the first two people, yeah. And this is just poor John. I just can't believe, like, what happened to him.
Yeah, when I was researching it, I just couldn't believe it either. She just done it with so premeditation and no guilt whatsoever, you know. She didn't feel sorry. Her brain was basically just so fucked, I guess, from a very young age. But I wanted to disclaim that at the very beginning, not everyone who had abusive childhood would do such a thing.
Definitely
You know,
not.
they seek help. She never ever wanted to seek help. So yeah, in 2001, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without a parole, and she will be there forever. She's still alive. She's still there, but no one heard about her. I was trying to find recent pictures of her, but unfortunately I couldn't. But she's still alive. That's all I know.
I'm glad she will be locked up, to be honest. I just can't believe it. Like, how can you do this to a person who you're supposed to love? It's your husband, it's your, like, partner in life, and you're just gonna do this for what?
Yeah.
She didn't even have reason to do this. Even if he cheated on her, that's still not a reason.
No.
which he didn't.
He didn't. No,
so,
no.
But even nothing can like justify what she did.
What I wanted also to add to how manipulative she was towards John. So there was a case when John was fired from work only because she was so jealous that he's there having the best time. He's basically working, bringing food on the table. So she stole medicine box that she must have found in a bin somewhere. Next to it was out-of-date medicine box. She planted on John and she reported him to that workplace that he stole it. The job didn't really do much investigations, obviously, so they got rid of him. So he just started being, more depressed and stuff. But it's just that manipulation, man.
I just hate people who are trying like to make your life worse and make you feel guilty about it.
Of course.
It's like
brainwashing and just gaslighting constantly. It happened to men also. We live in that society today that they think that men just need to be hard and strong and not even say to anyone that they're going through such a bad phase and there is no support, They should. And seriously, guys, if you're struggling with abusive relationship, you should fucking report it and you should seek help.
And don't be ashamed, because there's nothing shameful. Like, to me, I feel like that's why those two people didn't report her, because I feel like men feel so much more ashamed. Even women don't report anything these days sometimes, majority of the times, because it's just, you don't want people to know your personal life, I feel like, and like what you're going through, and you shouldn't feel ashamed if something so bad is happening to you, and it's just a shame, because good people are going through this shit. I just still can't. I feel like I'm gonna just black out what she did to him, because it was so horrible. I just can't believe you can do this to another human being. It's not like you cooking a steak, it's your fucking husband.
I know. The lack of remorse. Like, she wanted to serve it to their children. I just don't get it.
I'm just so glad they don't go this far, man.
And me. But I just... Imagine that, okay? So... Because it obviously happened, like, very early in the morning or in the night time. But the house was covered... Like, what was in her mind, right? The house was covered in blood. You obviously saw the skin there just being hung. The body in the other room. A head still simmering in a pot, and there was a food for their children. So what she thought, that the kids just gonna come home, pretending that they didn't see all that scene and just fucking eat that meal? Like, I think like she was so delusional. She lived in some sort of different world. There obviously was something wrong with her, and I'm so glad they didn't send her to a psychiatric hospital, because then that wouldn't be a justice for John whatsoever. They sentenced her to prison, and I'm so glad they did, with no possibility of parole. This woman will never see a normal life, and I'm so glad. She has amnesia. She wanted to, just pretend like nothing happened. She doesn't remember what happened.
I think she was crazy to some extent. As you said, like, it's not normal. Normal person wouldn't think as you said, the children would just go in and have the dinner. Like, maybe she was crazy, but still, that's not. It just went that far that it was. I don't think that should be an excuse. Even like you have mental health issues. I obviously will always feel bad about kids that being abused, and I feel sorry for her. Like, from the beginning of her life, she was abused, but
that
in the end of the day, you grow into an adult who can think, okay, I've been through so much, I need help. Now I've assaulted my first partner, my second partner, and it's just escalated so much that there's no going back anymore. It's like, poor John.
I know. It was an interesting story today, guys. Personally, for me, it was very, very intriguing to do a research on that, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know in the comments how we're doing, and if you liked what we do. We've got a group on Facebook, we've got an Instagram profile that you can follow us. We upload more pictures, there will be conversation with other members. It would be very nice if you could join us and follow us and let us know how we're doing. So please do like the episodes, subscribe us, and we will see you next time.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.